They breached the ship with murder in their hearts. Instead, they found their missing cubs purring softly against a dying human's chest. They came to kill her. They found her dying. The cubs, their cubs, were sleeping peacefully on her chest. And Rhodin, Alpha of the Bloodclaw Pack, lowered his weapon. The distress signal did not chirp. It howled. Before we dive in this story, please subscribe and tell us the country you're watching from. A bone-deep frequency that resonated through every Asharien vessel within 3 sectors, a call used only when cubs were in mortal danger. Alpha Rhodin stood rigid before the holographic display on his command deck, his clawed hand hovering over the console as the transmission repeated, each pulse driving deeper into his chest like a blade. 2 cubs, missing for 3 cycles, now detected aboard a human salvage vessel, drifting powerless at the edge of the drift. The warriors behind him shifted, a ripple of fur, metal, and barely restrained violence. Their breathing synchronized into a low, predatory rhythm that thrummed through the deck plating. Humans. Those strange, soft-skinned creatures who somehow survived vacuum exposure long enough to be rescued. Who metabolized toxins that would kill an Asharien in seconds. Who walked through radiation fields and kept laughing. Allies in the treaties. Unpredictable in practice. If a human had taken Asharien young, there would be no treaty. Mobilize the strike pack, Rhodin commanded, his voice a subsonic growl that rattled the view screens. 20 warriors materialized from the shadows, each one towering, fur-mantled, encased in ceremonial battle armor etched with kill marks. Their eyes ignited with bioluminescent fury, pupils narrowing to predatory slits. Claws extended with metallic snicks that echoed like a countdown. They boarded the assault craft with singular purpose. Retrieve the cubs. Eliminate the human. Leave no witnesses. The human ship materialized on their scanners like a corpse in the void, hull breached in 4 places, engines cold, emergency lights stuttering weakly against the dark. The vessel tumbled slowly, trailing frozen atmosphere like blood in water. Scanners registered 1 adult life signature. Human. Female. Fading. And the cubs. Alive. Weak, but alive. Breach Protocol Theta, Rhodin snapped, his voice tight. Non-lethal until I see them with my own eyes. The strike pack cut through the airlock in 6 seconds, plasma torches, manual override, synchronized entry. They poured into the corridor like a flood of claws and fury, weapons raised, every sense screaming threat, threat, threat. The hallway was claustrophobic, built for human proportions. The warriors crouched low, shoulders scraping the ceiling, moving in formation through the cramped space. The scent hit them immediately. Blood. Cub's blood, sweet, young, precious. Human blood, iron, and strange proteins. And something else. Something warm. Safe. Impossible. They tracked it to the medbay. The door was jammed, half melted from an emergency seal. Warning lights bathed the corridor in red. Rhodin raised 1 clawed fist. His warriors braced. He drove his shoulder into the door. Metal shrieked, collapsed inward. And every warrior froze. The human woman was slumped against the far wall, propped awkwardly on a medical cot stripped of blankets. Her left arm hung at a grotesque angle, shattered. Dark bruises mottled her exposed ribs beneath a shredded jacket. Blood matted her dark hair, streaked her pale face. Burns covered her hands. Her breathing was shallow, rattling, dying. But none of that mattered. Because curled against her chest, wrapped inside her jacket, tucked beneath her chin, were the cubs. Sleeping. Their small bodies rose and fell with her labored breaths. Tiny claws kneaded gently at her shirt. Soft purring filled the silence, the sound Asharien young made only when they felt utterly, completely safe. The strike pack stood paralyzed. No restraints. No cages. No weapons pointed at fragile skulls. The human had made herself their den. Her eyes fluttered open. Pale, human eyes that took in the armored giants surrounding her, the raised weapons, the death waiting in their claws. And she smiled. Weak. Exhausted. But genuine. You made it, she whispered, voice cracking. They wouldn't sleep unless I held them. Rhodin's lungs seized. This was not a hostage situation. This was not a crime scene. This was a mother, wrong species, impossible, human who had protected young not her own at the cost of everything. The human. Broken, bleeding, hours from death, had kept the cubs alive through pod failure, through starvation, through her own untreated injuries. His claws retracted with a soft snick. The pack stared as he holstered his plasma rifle, the motion slow, deliberate. The mission had changed. She had changed it. She was no longer the target. She was pack. Transition to backstory. But Rhodin didn't know her name yet. Didn't know how she'd found them or what she'd endured in the 3 cycles since the attack. He didn't know that she was a cargo technician named Lyra Hale, who had never fired a weapon in her life and had been in the wrong place at the worst possible time. He didn't know any of that. Not yet. What he did know was this. Somewhere in the last 72 hours, this human woman had made a choice that defied every instinct her species was known for. And he needed to understand why. How long? Rhodin's voice cut through the medbay silence. The human woman Lyra, her ID badge red, half torn from her jacket, blinked slowly, as if dragging herself back from somewhere very far away. 3 cycles, she whispered. Maybe more. Lost track after the 2nd day. 3 cycles. 72 hours. Rhodin's secondary heart stuttered. No Asharien could survive that long in her condition. The scans his medic was running painted a brutal picture. Compound fracture of the left radius and ulna, 4 cracked ribs, 2nd-degree burns across both palms, severe dehydration, early-stage hypothermia, blood loss approaching critical levels. She should be dead. Tell me what happened, he said, softer than he'd intended. 73 hours earlier. Lyra Hale had been running diagnostics on Cargo Bay 3 when the first explosion tore through the Wandering Star's port side. She wasn't military. Wasn't trained for combat. She was a technician. Good with systems, better with numbers, utterly unprepared for the pirates that boarded through the breach like a swarm of bladed nightmares. The crew fought back. Died back. Lyra ran. She made it to the escape corridor when she heard it, a sound that stopped her dead despite every survival instinct screaming at her to keep moving. Crying. Not human crying. Something else. Higher-pitched. Desperate. The kind of sound that bypassed logic and went straight to the part of the brain that responded to young thing in danger. The escape pod was half-crushed, wedged in the damaged airlock. Emergency lights bathed it in red. And inside, through the cracked viewport, 2 small, furred creatures. No bigger than human infants. Clawing at the glass. Keening. Lyra's hands moved before her mind caught up. Override the damaged seal. Wrenched the pod door open. Scooped the cubs into her arms as they latched onto her immediately, tiny claws digging through her jacket, their cries becoming whimpers, becoming silence, as they buried their faces against her chest. She'd heard of Asharien cubs. Seen them in diplomatic footage, adorable, protected, sacred to their people. These 2 were terrified. And she couldn't leave them. The pirates found her ship 14 minutes later. She barely made it to her own escape shuttle before they fired on the Wandering Star's core. The explosion threw her vessel into a spin, alarms shrieking as systems failed one by one. Life support, compromised. Navigation, offline. Communications, dead. Hull integrity, 70% and falling. The cubs wouldn't stop crying. The pod had emergency rations, Lyra continued, her voice distant. Asharien nutrients. I didn't know what they needed, but I figured, baby things need milk, right? Warmth. Safety. She'd torn open the ration packs with her teeth, her hands already burned from the damaged control panel she'd tried to repair. Fed the cubs one at a time, let them lick the nutrient paste from her fingers until their desperate whimpering eased. Power cells were failing. She diverted everything to the medbay, the only room with functioning life support. Everything else went dark. Cold. Temperature dropped to 4 degrees Celsius, she said flatly. The cubs started shivering. So she wrapped them in every blanket aboard. When that wasn't enough, she'd stripped off her jacket, her shirt, held them against her bare skin beneath the remaining fabric. Used her own body heat. Didn't sleep lying down because every time she tried, they panicked. Didn't eat the human rations because there weren't enough and she needed to stay conscious more than she needed food. Didn't drink after the first day because dehydration was slower than deactivation of the medbay's oxygen scrubbers. The broken arm happened on day 2. A support beam collapsed when she tried to reroute power. She'd screamed, bit through her lip, then splinted it herself with torn metal and fabric because the cubs were right there and she couldn't scare them. The medbay had one functioning auto-injector of painkillers. She'd stared at it for 10 minutes. Used it on the smaller cub when he developed a fever instead. Rhodin's claws scraped against the metal floor, leaving thin grooves. His pack surrounded him now, listening. Watching this fragile human with new eyes. You could have signaled the pirates, his second-in-command, Vex said quietly. Traded the cubs for passage off the ship. Lyra's laugh was broken glass. They were babies. What kind of monster? She stopped, coughed blood into her palm. I just kept thinking someone would find the distress beacon. That you'd come for them. You could have died, Rhodin said. I was going to die. She looked down at the sleeping cubs, her ruined hand trembling as she stroked one's ear. At least this way, they wouldn't be alone. Silence filled the medbay. The pack medic approached Rhodin, spoke in the subsonic register humans couldn't hear. Alpha. Her injuries. No Asharien would have survived this. Our pain tolerance is triple human baseline. Our healing factor is exponentially faster. She endured this for 3 cycles with nothing. Rhodin stared at Lyra. She'd protected Asharien young at the cost of her own survival. Not for reward. Not for leverage. Not even for rescue. Just because they needed her. Every instinct he possessed was screaming at him, Pack Bond protect mine star. But she was human. Humans were unpredictable. Dangerous in their desperation. He'd seen what they did when cornered. But he'd never seen this. Sedate her, Rhodin commanded. Carefully. Begin tissue regeneration immediately. And the cubs? Vex asked. Rhodin watched as the medic tried to lift one cub away. It woke instantly, crying, clawing at the air toward Lyra until she made a soft sound and it calmed. They stay with her, he said quietly. Until she wakes. Because somewhere in the last 72 hours, this human woman had become something impossible. She'd become Pack. And Rhodin was going to have to explain that to a council that had banned human integration for 200 years. The sedative took effect slowly. Lyra fought it, her eyes struggling to stay open, fixed on the cubs even as her body finally surrendered to exhaustion. Rhodin moved before he consciously decided to. He knelt beside the medical cot, sliding one arm beneath her shoulders, the other under her knees. Lifted her with the same careful precision he'd used with Asharien young, aware of every broken bone, every burn, every place her body had sacrificed itself. She weighed almost nothing. Behind him, the strike pack shifted. Vex's hand moved toward his weapon, not threatening, but uncertain. Confused. Alpha, Vex said carefully. What are you doing? Rhodin turned, Lyra cradled against his chest, the cubs mewing softly as they struggled to follow. What does it look like? His voice carried the subsonic rumble of absolute authority. It looks like you're claiming a human. The words came from Keth, a scarred warrior at the back. We have protocols. Treaties. Laws that. She protected what is mine. Rhodin's eyes ignited, bioluminescent fury that made several warriors take involuntary steps backward. She endured 3 cycles of agony to keep Asharien cubs alive. She gave them her warmth, her food, her blood. He looked down at Lyra's unconscious face. Still streaked with dirt and dried blood, features slack with the first piece she'd probably felt in days. Now we protect her. The words hung in the air like a dropped blade. Vex inhaled sharply. Alpha, the council will never. The council, Rhodin growled, did not watch her nearly die for our young. I did. You did. He swept his gaze across the assembled warriors. Anyone who disagrees can explain to the cubs why we left the only mother they've known to perish on a dying ship. Silence. Ket's claws retracted. He lowered his head, not quite submission, but acknowledgement. Extraction protocol, Rhodin commanded. Vex, you carry the cubs. Everyone else, secure the transfer corridor. I want her on our ship in 5 minutes. They moved. The Bloodclaw's medbay was a cathedral compared to the dying human vessel, sleek obsidian walls embedded with bioluminescent veins, medical pods that hummed with regeneration technology centuries beyond human capability. Rhodin laid Lyra in the primary pod himself, his hands steadier than they'd been since receiving the distress signal. The medical AI chirped in Asharien, subject identified as human. Genetic compatibility with Asharien healing protocols, 12%. Recommend species-specific treatment. Override, Rhodin snapped. Use full regeneration matrix. Compensate for biological differences. Such treatment may cause unforeseen. Do it. The pod sealed. Blue light cascaded over Lyra's broken body as nanites began their work, knitting bone, repairing tissue, purging toxins. The readings stabilized. Strengthened. She would live. Rhodin should have left then. Should have returned to the bridge, filed reports, prepared for the political firestorm he'd just ignited. Instead, he pulled up a chair. Saturday. Watched. He didn't understand the compulsion. Pack bond didn't work this way. Not with other species, not this quickly, not without the ritual exchanges that took months to establish. But his instincts didn't care about logic. They screamed, pack. Protect. Mine, Alpha. The voice was soft, familiar. Rhodin turned to find Kayla in the doorway, his mate, her silver fur immaculate, her amber eyes sharp with curiosity rather than judgment. I heard you claimed a human, she said mildly, moving to stand beside him. Her gaze swept over Lyra's unconscious form, then shifted to the corner where Vex sat with the cubs. Or tried to. One cub was crying, not the desperate wails from the escape pod, but plaintive, searching sounds. Vex held it carefully, making soothing rumbles, but the cub squirmed, reaching toward the medical pod. Toward Lyra. They won't settle, Vex admitted, frustration evident. I've tried everything. Fed them, warmed them, played the calming frequencies. The moment I moved them away from her. He gestured helplessly as the cub's cries intensified. Kayla approached, took the cub from Vex's arms. It quieted briefly at her touch. She was a mother, had raised 4 cubs of her own, but within seconds, the crying resumed. She carried it to the medical pod, held it close to the transparent surface. The cub pressed tiny paws against the barrier, went silent, stared at Lyra's face. Fascinating, Kayla murmured. They bonded to her, Rhodin said quietly. In 3 cycles, they bonded to a human. No. Kayla set the cub down gently. It immediately curled against the base of the pod, purring. They didn't bond to a human. She turned to face Rhodin, and something ancient flickered in her eyes, the wisdom of Asharien mothers who understood pack bond in ways warriors never could. They bonded to their mother, she said simply. The fact that she's human is irrelevant to them. The second cub crawled over to join the first. Both of them pressed against the pod, their purring synchronized. The cubs chose her, Kayla continued, her voice soft but certain. And by our oldest laws, that makes her pack. Whether the council likes it or not. Rhodin felt something unlock in his chest, validation for the instinct that had driven him to holster his weapon, to carry Lyra to safety, to defy every protocol. The council will fight this, he said. Let them. Kayla's smile was sharp-edged. I'd like to see them explain to the matriarchs why we abandoned a mother who protected Asharien young with her life. She rested a hand on Rhodin's shoulder, squeezed once. You did the right thing, my heart. Now we deal with the consequences. The cubs purred louder. And Rhodin settled back into his chair, prepared to wait however long it took for Lyra to wake. Because she was Pack now. And Pack didn't abandon their own. The data from the Wandering Star's black box arrived 6 hours into Lyra's regeneration cycle. Vex brought it to the medbay personally, his expression grim. Alpha, you need to see this. Rhodin dragged his attention from the medical pod, where Lyra's vitals had finally stabilized into deep, healing sleep, and took the data slate. What he read made his blood turn to ice. This wasn't random, he said slowly. No. Vex's claws extended, retracted. The pirates knew exactly which ship carried the cubs. They disabled weapons first, life support second. Targeted the escape pods specifically. He paused. Someone gave them intelligence. The slate showed communications logs, encrypted but now broken. Messages between the pirate vessel and an unknown buyer. Words that made Rhodin's vision blur with rage. Asharien juveniles confirmed. Rare genetics. Buyer willing to pay triple for live specimens. Asterisk. Trafficking. The word came out as a subsonic snarl that made the cubs stir in their sleep. Someone is trafficking Asharien young. It gets worse. Vex pulled up another file. This is the 4th attack in 6 months. Different sectors. Different pirate crews. Same buyer signature. Rhodin's claws punched through the data slate. Someone was hunting cubs. Systematically. For profit. And they'd nearly succeeded. Would have succeeded. If not for a human cargo technician who refused to let children die alone in the dark. Lyra awoke screaming. The medical pod hissed open, and she lurched upright, gasping, eyes wild, still trapped somewhere between memory and present, where pirates were breaching the hull and everything was fire and blood and run, run, run. The cubs. Her voice cracked. Where are the... Warm weight landed in her lap. Too small, purring bodies scrambled up her chest, butting their heads against her chin, tiny paws kneading her shoulders. Their relief was palpable, safe, mother safe, and Lyra's panic shattered into something dangerously close to tears. I've got you, she whispered, wrapping her arms around them. I've got you, it's okay, you're... She stopped. Looked up. The medbay was wrong. Too big. Too advanced. The walls weren't metal, but something organic, pulsing with soft blue light. And surrounding her were warriors, massive, armored, alien warriors whose eye glowed in the dimness like predators. Her breath caught. You're awake. The largest one, the Alpha, she remembered through the fog, stepped forward. How do you feel? Lyra stared at her arms. No burns. She flexed her left hand, the broken one, and it moved perfectly. No pain, no stiffness. She touched her ribs. Healed. What did you do to me? Saved your life. His voice was surprisingly gentle. Our medical technology is advanced. I can see that. She looked down at the cubs, who had settled into purring lumps against her chest. Are they okay? I tried to feed them, but I didn't know if I was doing it right, and the smaller one had a fever. They're healthy, Kayla said, appearing beside Rhodin. Thanks to you. Lyra's laugh was shaky. I couldn't leave them. We know. Rhodin pulled up a chair, sat so he wasn't looming over her. We also know what you endured. 3 cycles. Your injuries. The sacrifices you made. Anyone would have. No. Vex's voice cut through from the doorway. No, they wouldn't have. Most beings would have used the cubs as leverage. Or abandoned them to save themselves. You did neither. Lyra frowned, confused. They're babies. The warriors exchanged glances, something passing between them that she couldn't interpret. Lyra hail, Rhodin said formally. The cubs have bonded to you. By our oldest laws, that makes you pack. You're under Bloodclaw protection now. The words should have been comforting. Instead, dread pooled in her stomach. Pack, she repeated slowly. That sounds official. It is. Kayla's expression was kind but firm. You're Asharien now. In every way that matters. But I'm human. Yes. And that's allowed? Silence. Lyra looked down at the cubs, her throat tight. I'm causing a problem. A political incident. The council, Rhodin began. Will be furious, Lyra finished. She carefully detached the cubs, set them beside her despite their protests. It's okay. I understand. You saved my life, I'm grateful. But I should probably go back to human space before this becomes a bigger issue. She swung her legs off the medbay bed, stood on shaky legs. Every warrior in the room went rigid. Sit down. Rhodin's voice carried a harmonic that made her bones vibrate. Lyra sat. He loomed over her now, all pretense of gentleness gone, replaced by something primal and absolute. Your pack, he said, each word precise. Pack does not leave. Not for politics. Not for treaties. Not for the comfort of councils who were not there when you nearly died protecting our young. But you endured torture to keep them safe. His claws scraped the floor. You gave them everything, your warmth, your food, your blood. You became their mother when their own pack failed them. Lyra's eyes burned. The council will demand your removal, Rhodin continued, quieter now. They will threaten sanctions. They will cite laws written by cowards who never had to choose between politics and family. He knelt, bringing himself to her eye level. I don't care. Kayla doesn't care. This pack doesn't care. The cubs chose you, Kayla added softly. And we don't abandon our own. The cubs, sensing tension, crawled back into Lyra's lap. Curled up. Purred. Lyra looked at them. These small, impossible creatures who trusted her completely, and then at the warriors surrounding her. Aliens. Predators. Family. I don't understand your customs, she whispered. I'll make mistakes. I'm not like you. Good, Vex said, surprising everyone. We don't need another warrior. We need a mother brave enough to hold cubs while her ship dies around her. Rhodin extended one massive hand. Will you stay? As pack. Lyra looked at his hand. Clawed, powerful, capable of tearing her apart. Took it. Yes, she said. I'll stay. The cubs' purring intensified. And somewhere in the void, pirates who hunted children continued their search, unaware that they'd just made a catastrophic mistake. They'd given the Bloodclaw pack a reason to hunt back. The intelligence report arrived during Lyra's first meal with the pack. She sat cross-legged on the floor of the communal hall. Chairs built for Asharien frames were impossible for her human proportions, with both cubs sprawled across her lap. Warriors filled the benches around her, their conversations a rumbling mix of subsonic growls and clicking consonants she was slowly learning to interpret. Keth had just offered her a piece of roasted crush, some kind of spiced meat that smelled incredible, when every warrior in the room went silent simultaneously. Rhodin stood in the doorway, data slate in hand, his expression carved from stone. Alpha. Kayla rose from her seat. They found us. His voice carried no inflection. Pure fact. Pirate vessel. Modified cruiser. Tracking our ion signature. The temperature in the room dropped. Lyra's hand stilled halfway to her mouth. The same ones who... Yes. Rhodin's eyes found hers across the crowded hall. They want the cubs back. Over my corpse, Vex snarled, his claws extending with metallic clicks that echoed through the sudden silence. That can be arranged. Rhodin set the data slate on the central table, pulled up a holographic display. A ship materialized sleek, bristling with weapons, bearing scorch marks from recent combat. This is the Flesh Render, captained by a Krell warlord named Vazoth. He specializes in, his voice hardened, exotic acquisitions. Lyra felt sick. You mean trafficking? Yes. Kayla moved to stand beside Rhodin, studying the display with predatory focus. He's been operating in the Outer Drift for years. Authorities can't touch him, too many political connections, too many buyers in protected space. How long until they reach us? Keth asked. 18 hours. The cubs whimpered, sensing the tension. Lyra pulled them closer, her heart hammering against her ribs. We run, she said quietly. You jump to a different sector. I'll take a shuttle back to human space, lead them away. Every eye in the room turned to her. Absolutely not, Rhodin said. They're after the cubs. If I'm not here, they're after you two now. Vex pulled up another section of the data. Communications intercepts. Her stomach dropped as she read the translated text. Human female bonded to specimens. Rare occurrence. Buyer interested in studying cross-species imprinting. Retrieve alive if possible. They know, she whispered. They know you protected Asharien young. Rhodin's voice carried an edge that made her bones vibrate. They know the cubs have bonded to you. And they think that makes you valuable. Lyra looked down at the two small bodies in her lap, trusting, innocent, completely dependent on the adults around them to keep them safe. So we fight, she said. Keth laughed, a sharp, approving bark. The human has claws after all. She has cubs to protect, Kayla corrected. That makes her more dangerous than any of us. The next 12 hours blurred together. Rhodin converted a cargo bay into a combat operations center. Warriors ran weapons drills. Engineers reinforced the hull. The Bloodclaw transformed from a transport vessel into something predatory. And Lyra learned. Kayla taught her the subsonic frequencies Asharien used for silent communication. Showed her how to read pack body language. The angle of ears, the cant of shoulders, the meaning behind different growls. Vex, surprisingly, taught her how to hold a plasma pistol. You won't be frontline, he said, adjusting her grip. But if they breach the ship. I know where to aim, Lyra finished, her jaw set. He studied her for a long moment. I misjudged you, human. Lyra. He inclined his head, the first gesture of respect he'd offered. You're tougher than you look. I had good motivation. She glanced toward the corner where the cubs napped in a makeshift nest, guarded by two warriors who refused to leave their post. Through it all, Rhodin watched. Not obviously, he had a ship to prepare, strategies to coordinate, a crew to command. But Lyra felt his attention like a physical weight. Every time she looked up, his eyes were there, tracking her movements, monitoring her stress levels. It should have been unsettling. Instead, it felt safe. You're pacing, Kayla observed. Rhodin stopped mid-stride in his personal quarters, realized she was right. The tactical situation is not why you're pacing. His mate settled onto the resting platform, her expression knowing. You're worried about her. She's pack. Of course I'm. Rhodin. Kayla's voice gentled. I've known you for 20 years. This is different. He wanted to deny it. Couldn't. Because she was right. Somewhere between finding Lyra dying on that human ship and watching her hold the cubs while learning to fire a weapon, something had shifted. He could sense her now, her heartbeat, her emotional state, the spike of adrenaline when she thought about the coming fight. Pack bond didn't work this fast. Didn't cross species barriers. Didn't feel like this. The cubs chose her, he said finally. Yes. Kayla moved to stand beside him. And so did you. Before he could respond, alarms shrieked through the ship. The enemy had arrived early. The first impact nearly tore the Bloodclaw in half. Lyra slammed against the bulkhead, the cubs shrieking as she wrapped herself around them, absorbing the impact with her own body. Emergency lights bathed everything in red. Alarms screamed. Hull breach, sections 4 through 7, someone shouted over the calm. All warriors to defensive positions. Rhodin's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Protect the nursery. The nursery. The reinforced chamber where Lyra had been ordered to stay with the cubs while the pack fought. She'd made it 3 steps before the second explosion rocked the ship. Metal shrieked. The corridor buckled. And through the new tear in the hull, she saw them. Pirates. Dozens of them, in vacuum suits, mag boots clamping to the Bloodclaw's exterior as they cut their way inside. They're boarding. Vex's snarl echoed from somewhere above. Southeast quadrant. A plasma blast turned his words into static. Lyra ran. The cubs clung to her, claws digging through her borrowed Asharien tunic as she sprinted down the corridor. The nursery was 2 sections away. She could make it. She just had to. A wall exploded inward. She dove sideways, hit the ground rolling, came up with the cubs clutched against her chest and a pirate standing between her and safety. Krell. Massive, reptilian, covered in scavenged armor. His weapon tracked toward her. The human, he hissed in broken common. The buyer wants you alive. Cubs too. Lyra backed up, her hand finding the plasma pistol Vex had given her. You're not taking them. He laughed. Little human thinks she can. She shot him in the throat. The recoil nearly broke her wrist, but the pirate went down, gurgling. Lyra didn't stop to watch. Just ran, lungs burning, the cub's terrified cries driving her forward like fuel. The nursery door was right there. Another explosion. This one closer. The floor tilted violently and she fell, twisting mid-fall to keep the cubs from hitting the ground. Her shoulder cracked against metal. Pain lanced through her, but she didn't let go. Never let go. Boots thundered toward her. Multiple pirates, weapons raised. She raised the pistol with shaking hands, and Rhodin materialized like vengeance made flesh. Lyra had never seen an Asharien truly fight. It was beautiful. Terrible. Absolute. Rhodin moved like physics didn't apply to him. Claws tearing through armor, jaws closing around throats, his roar shaking the very hull as he carved through the boarding party. Blood sprayed. Bodies fell. He was a storm-given form, and everything in his path died. A pirate tried to flank him. Rhodin's tail whipped around, spikes impaling the attacker through the chest. Another fired point-blank. Rhodin took the hit, kept moving, and removed the pirate's head. Get to the nursery, he snarled at Lyra between kills. Asterisk now, asterisk. She scrambled to her feet, ran. Wait. A new voice. Cold. Amused. Every warrior froze. Through the breach stepped something worse than pirates. Vazoth himself, a Krull warlord twice Rhodin's size, covered in ceremonial bone armor, carrying a weapon that hummed with illegal tech. Alpha Rhodin, Vazoth purred. Still playing hero, I see. You made a mistake coming here, Rhodin growled, putting himself between the warlord and Lyra. Did I? Vazoth's eyes, flat, predatory, shifted to Lyra. I don't think so. In fact, I'm exactly where I need to be. He raised a clawed hand. The original attack on your transport? I commissioned it. Specifically targeted cubs from your bloodline. Rare genetics, you understand. Very valuable. Lyra's blood turned to ice. You commissioned, Rhodin's voice dropped into registers that made the walls vibrate. The Asharien are so protective of their young, Vazoth continued, almost conversational. Makes them easy to manipulate. Trigger a rescue instinct, watch you all scramble. He smiled. And occasionally you find something unexpected. His gaze locked on Lyra. A human who can bond with alien cubs. Do you know how many buyers would pay for that ability? She's not for sale, Rhodin snarled. Everything's for sale, Alpha. You just haven't heard the right price. Vazoth fired. Not at Rhodin. At Lyra. Rhodin moved impossibly fast, throwing himself between the blast and her body. The weapon's discharge caught him full in the chest, tearing through armor, flesh, bone. He went down hard, blood pooling beneath him. Rhodin. Lyra's scream tore from her throat. The cubs shrieked, scrambling toward their alpha as he struggled to breathe, one hand pressed uselessly against the wound that was killing him. Vazoth advanced. Now. Come quietly, human, or I kill him slow. Lyra's mind went perfectly, crystalline clear. She had no weapons, no strength, no combat training. But she had 3 cycles of keeping cubs alive on a dying ship. She had ingenuity. Her eyes found the emergency panel. The hull breach alarm. The atmospheric controls that were screaming warnings about pressure loss. She lunged for the controls, slammed her fist on the manual override, and vented the entire section into space. The rush of atmosphere was instantaneous. Violent. Pirates without mag boots activated went tumbling toward the breach, screaming. Vazoth snarled, his boots engaging, but the sudden decompression staggered him. Lyra had already moved. She grabbed Rhodin. Somehow, impossibly, her human frame finding strength she didn't know she had, and dragged him toward the emergency airlock. The cubs followed, their claws finding purchase on the tilting floor. Vazoth roared, raising his weapon. Vex crashed into him from above, claws raking, buying seconds. Lyra hit the airlock release. Fell through with Rhodin's massive weight crushing her, the cubs tumbling after. The door sealed. Pressure equalized. Silence. Rhodin's breathing was wet, labored. Dying. No, Lyra whispered, pressing her hands against the wound. Blood poured between her fingers, too much, too fast. No, you don't get to die. You hear me? You don't. The cubs pressed against him, whimpering. Rhodin's eyes found hers. Pack, he rasped. Protect, Pack. I am. Tears streamed down her face. You're Pack too, you stubborn. Her hands found the emergency medkit mounted on the wall. Foam sealant. Coagulant injectors. Not enough. Not nearly enough. But it was what she had. So she used it. Sealed the wound. Injected stimulants. Screamed for help through the comm until Kayla's voice crackled back, coordinates, medical team incoming. And held Rhodin's massive hand while the cubs curled against his side. Stay, she whispered. Please. Stay. His claws tightened around her fingers. And didn't let go. Rhodin woke to the sound of crying. Not the pirates. Vex had handled Vazoth personally, and what remained of the warlord now drifted in the void with his crew. Not alarms, the Bloodclaw was damaged but stable, limping toward the nearest Asharien outpost for repairs. The cubs. They were screaming. He tried to sit up, his chest erupting in white-hot agony that stole his breath. Kayla's hands pressed him back down, gentle but firm. Don't, she murmured. You nearly died. The regeneration matrix needs another cycle at least. The cubs won't settle. Frustration edged her voice. We've tried everything. Fed them, warmed them, played every calming frequency we know. They just keep crying for Lyra. His voice came out as a rasp. Where is she? Sleeping. Finally. In the adjacent chamber. She hasn't left your side for 18 hours. Kayla's expression softened. Rhodin, she saved your life. Vented an entire section into space, dragged you to safety, treated your wounds with human emergency supplies that shouldn't have worked but did. She. The cubs' cries intensified, desperate now. Bring them here, Rhodin commanded. You need to rest. Bring them, asterisk. Kayla sighed but obeyed, returning moments later with both cubs squirming in her arms. The instant they saw Rhodin, their cries changed, became reaching, pleading sounds that tugged at something primal in his chest. But they didn't settle. Even when Kayla set them on his bed, even when he rumbled soothing harmonics, they kept crying, kept searching. For her. Get Lyra, he said quietly. She came stumbling into the medbay, still half asleep, wearing an oversized Asharien tunic that hung to her knees, her hair a disaster, eyes barely open. What's wrong? Are they hurt? Is Rhodin. The cubs saw her and launched. Lyra caught them on pure instinct, nearly toppling backward as they climbed her like a tree, butting their heads against her chin, purring so loudly the sound filled the entire room. And then silence. They settled against her chest, tucked under her chin, tiny paws kneading her shoulders as their purring dropped into the deep, resonant frequency that meant safe content home. Within seconds, they were asleep. Lyra stood frozen, looking utterly bewildered. What did I do? Existed, Kayla said softly. They won't sleep unless you're holding them. But you're you're Asharien. I'm just their mother, Rhodin finished. His voice was steady despite the pain radiating through his chest. Whether you gave birth to them or not. Whether you share their DNA or not. You're who they chose. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. Rhodin, I can't, this is too much. The council, the treaties, the politics are irrelevant. He pushed himself upright despite Kayla's protest, swung his legs off the medbay bed, and stood. Swayed. Steadied. Crossed the distance between them on sheer willpower. Lyra Hale of Earth. His voice dropped into the ceremonial registers, the ones used for blood oaths and pact bonds. You protected Asharien young at the cost of your own life. You fought pirates to keep them safe. You dragged a dying Alpha to safety when any sane being would have run. I couldn't just leave. And that, he continued, reaching out to rest one massive hand on her shoulder, is why I declare you Pack. Full Pack. Bloodclaw Pack. My Pack. His eyes met hers, glowing with intensity. Any who dispute this can face me in the circle. Any who threaten you answer to the entire clan. You're ours and we are yours from this moment until the stars go dark. The words hung in the air like a physical thing. Lyra opened her mouth, closed it, looked down at the sleeping cubs, then back up at Rhodin. I don't know how to be Asharien, she whispered. You already are, Kayla said from behind them. You just didn't know it yet. The council arrived 3 days later. 5 matriarchs, ancient and imposing, who filled the Bloodclaw's briefing room with disapproval so thick it was nearly visible. They'd come to contest the pact bond, to demand Lyra's removal, to cite treaties and protocols and centuries of precedent. They stopped talking the moment the cubs entered. Lyra carried them, one on each hip, both purring contentedly. They'd refuse to eat breakfast unless she fed them, refused to sleep anywhere but on her chest, refused to let her out of their sight for more than a few minutes before their cries brought warriors running. The lead matriarch stared for a long moment. Impossible, she breathed. And yet, Rhodin stood beside Lyra, his wounds still healing but his presence absolute. Here they are. Another matriarch moved closer, studying Lyra with sharp eyes. The bond mark. She doesn't have. She stopped. Because there, on Lyra's collarbone where the cubs had slept for so many cycles, a pattern was emerging. Faint bioluminescent traces, not quite Asharien, not quite human. Something between. The cubs' purring had changed her, marked her, claimed her at a cellular level. By the ancestors, the matriarch whispered. It's real. Did you think we would lie? Kayla's voice carried an edge that made several matriarchs step back. We thought. Political maneuvering. Manipulation. We've seen humans use sentiment as a weapon before. Then you haven't met Lyra, Bex growled from his position by the door. She's worth 10 of your politicians. The lead matriarch studied Lyra for a long moment. Tell me, human, why did you save them? Lyra looked down at the cubs, her expression soft. Because they were crying. Because they were scared. Because they were children and I couldn't just. Her voice broke. I couldn't let them die alone. Silence. Then the matriarch did something Rhodin had never seen in 40 years. She bowed. The cubs have chosen, she said formally. The pack has accepted. The bond is witnessed. She straightened. Lyra Hale is pack. Anyone who says otherwise answers to the matriarchs. 6 months later. Lyra sat in the observation deck, the cubs, bigger now, but still young, curled against her chest. They'd started teething. Her tunic bore the evidence of tiny puncture marks, but she didn't mind. Rhodin found her there, silhouetted against the stars. They're asleep again, she said without looking up. They're always asleep on you. He settled beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. It's their favorite place. Mine too, she admitted quietly. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the cosmos drift past. Rhodin? Lyra's voice was small. Thank you. For not killing me when you found me. He turned, studied her profile in the starlight. Thank you for giving me a reason not to. The cubs purred. And somewhere in the archives, the official record was updated. They arrived for blood. But they found family.